What's up guys, ATCG here. Welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck of the Day. The ban list has finally dropped, and today I am bringing to you the most wanted ever deck profile that since they got neutered some years ago, we're bringing Shaddolls back. Construct is finally back to 3 after such a long time. It took a lot of time for Konami to release Construct to 3. We know that we're getting a Shaddoll structure deck, but we don't know when exactly. So until then, this is the list that we're going to mess around with. And there are a lot of ways to play Shaddolls. You can incorporate them with pretty much anything you want, and it can work just fine. A really good version would be mekk-knight invoked version with Shaddolls, because you get a lot of light monsters because of the invokes and the Shaddolls, and you can bring negations. But I just had to bring to you as much of a pure Shadow deck as possible, similar to how it used to be back in the day, just because I haven't played this deck for such a long time. It's been a very nostalgic deck for me. The Duelist Alliance format was just an amazing format, and I just wanted to make a pure Shadow deck for start. And if this video is liked by all of you guys, then we will bring you more versions of Shaddolls now that we have the utility of Construct being back to 3. So let's start with the monsters. I'm playing a lot of Shaddoll monsters in the main deck because if you're going first, then in order to make a decent board, you need to hard draw Shaddolls. So I think you have to take into consideration that you might run into a deck that doesn't summon from the extra deck, so you won't be able to use Shaddoll Fusion's full power, or maybe you want to go first so you can have some interruptions on the field. So that's why you need to play a lot of Shaddolls in such a version. So start off with 3 Shaddoll Beast. Pretty much, I think the most generic one you want to start with, because when it goes to the grave by card effect, you simply draw a card, and when it's flipped, you draw 2 and you discard 1. There was the good old play for the mirror match where you would summon a construct, then tribute her with Shaddoll Beast, so you won't leave a monster from the extra deck, so your opponent can Shaddoll Fusion you back. That's not even worth doing anymore. I don't think you're gonna run into a lot of mirror matches, so you can leave your construct on the field. But if you bring back Shaddoll Beast with Falco's effect, then you can get pluses, and it's pretty much what gets your engine going and lets you see more cards from your deck. Next up, 3 Squamata. Squamata is a foolish burial of the deck, sends any Shaddoll card you need to the grave. It can also send spells and traps, so you can send the fusion you're missing, or you can send core to get back a fusion, so that's an option. And on the flip, it destroys a monster on the field, so if your opponent has a problematic monster, then you can just set Squamata. If you have like a Vantage Fiend you can't really play, you set Squamata, and when you attack it, you destroy the monster, so that's also an option. 3 Falco. I'm pretty sure 3 Falco is really good. Because Shaddolls struggle in the late game, they don't have the way to control the board aside from Winda. So I think bringing back your fusions with Falco is very important, because having a lot of fusions on the field is very it applies a lot of pressure for the opponent, because Shaddolls don't have a good link. I'm not even running the Shadow link. I think it's not worth running. So you cannot spam a lot of fusions unless you bring them back from the graveyard with Falco every turn. So I think that's why you need to run 3 Falco. It's also tuner, but I don't think it's worth playing any synchros. It's pretty much an outdated version of the deck playing synchros. It used to back in the day, but not anymore. 2 Shaddoll Dragon, pops back row. On flip, you target a card in the field, you return to the hand. You don't need to max it out. In some matchups, it might be dead. There are some decks that don't run any back row. For example, Thunder Dragons, they did not get touched at all by the list, so you will see a lot of them, and that's a deck, that Shaddoll Dragon. Shaddoll Dragon is kind of 50-50 against that deck, because the flip effect is really good, but flip effects are not that fast anymore. So yeah, the grave effect is not that relevant. So if you draw it and you're forced to use it for fusion, then it will just be dead material. And 2 Shaddoll Hedgehog. Hedgehog, the flip effect to add a Shaddoll spell and trap. You don't really need it anymore, because there are ways to get your fusion cards, and with 3 Super Poly now, you do have fusion cards even when you don't have the Shaddoll fusion spells. So that's the flip effects are kind of very slow for a format like this. But when you send this to the grave, you get a Shaddoll from the deck, so it replaces itself. So I think it's good to have a 2, not a 3, because it gives you a Shaddoll card. Shaddoll Monster, which will not do that much. Well, if you use Shaddoll Beast, you might be able to draw a hand trap or something that can disrupt your opponent. So it has a lot of more potential. So I don't think you need to run 3 Hedgehog. I'm playing the Clown engine, play 2 damage Juggler, 1 Trick Clown, and 1 Hat Trigger. I think it's pretty much the best light targets you can have in the deck. Hat Trigger is Earth, but you can search it and it's from special summon for Link Fodder, and you can use it for Sekinaga, so that's why you run it. If Orcusts turn out to be a force to be reckoned with, even after banning Mermaid, maybe main decking Lancia is an option, because Lancia is also a light monster. It can hurt Thunder, which will be, again, like I said, which will be probably the best deck, of the format. And yeah, if it's you have a very powerful hand trap that can also be used as material when the matchup, you don't really need it against that matchup. If you're playing against Salmon Greats, you won't need Lancia, so you can just fuse it away. That's pretty much what you need for a really good light target for this deck. But I think Juggler is the best one. It can sneak out some saves when you're about to lose, which also is a plus, but also gives you free advantage, which what you need. Because when you Shaddoll Fusion and your opponent has a monster from the extra deck, if it resolves, you can get so much advantage because you can send a juggler and a beast. Beast will get you a card, Juggler will get you a card, Construct will also send another card, so that will get you another plus. And when Construct leaves, you'll be able to get back your Shaddoll Fusion. So that's pretty much amazing. That's the power of Shadows. If you let the plays go through, it gets so much advantage, which is not even funny. So, yep, that's why I think Juggler is really good. Now I'm playing Armageddon Knight. One problem that I had with Shadows is that it does not have a reliably good normal summon. So I think being able to get to Armageddon Knight, send a Shadow, maybe draw a card, search a card, whatever you need, it's really good. And since you don't have a lot of normal summons, there's not even a scenario where you, maybe if you have the other normal summon which are around the deck, then you can just use Armageddon Knight for making Winda. And Winda can shut down so many decks just by herself. And the other normal summon I run is Mathematician, pretty much serving the exact same purpose as Armageddon Knight. Being an Earth, you can make Sekinaga. Sekinaga is a really good card for disruption. So, yeah, you cannot send Beast directly, but you can just send Skomata, and Skomata will send the Beast, so that doesn't even matter. So it's pretty much the exact same thing. And for the hand traps, I play 3 Ash and 2 Ghost Ogre. Ash is pretty much the most generic one in a format where we don't know yet what the best deck will be. Probably will be Thunder, that's my guess, but you never know. I think Ash is the best hand trap to run. And I think Ogre, with the exception of Salamangreat, it's still a really good card. I think Altergeist are going to be really good. True Drake are going to be really good. Pendulums are still very powerful. Maybe Pure Endymion will overtake as the most dominant deck. And also their attributes are really important. Ash is a fire, which you can make Greista, and Greista is a really good monster because it stops pendulum summons, it stops a lot of just inherent special summons. And Ghost Ogre is of course a light. You can make Construct with it, so that's self-explanatory. You don't even need to say more about that. Now let's go to the spells. 3 Shaddoll Fusion. This card, if it resolves when going second, then you're pretty much going to win. You get so much free advantage with just a card. It's very, very powerful. And all the fusion spells, you can just get them back whenever your fusion dies. So it's not like you ever run out of them. The only problem is running out of shadows during the late game, but that's why I run 13 in the main deck to make sure that doesn't happen. Next, 3 Shaddoll Fusion. It's pretty much a disruption and a push card. You can use it during your opponent's turn to make a window to lock them out of their special summoning, or when you're trying to go for game and you make your plays, you can make a link, then you can just attack with everything, then Shaddoll Fusion, make another monster and attack with it as well, and maybe it's enough to go for game. And these 2 cards, if you don't have access to them, you can just send them to the grave with Komada and retrieve them with either Core or any of the fusions going to the grave. So you don't even need to hard draw them to get access to them, or use Hedgehog's mediocre flip effect to get them to your hand. But the best fusion spell in the deck is Super Poly. Super Poly was not that. It wasn't a 3 for such a long time when Shadows were played. It went to 1 before Shaddoll Fusion got released. So having 3 Super Polys is so amazing for the deck because you can just disrupt your opponents. I run every single attribute of fusions, so you can cover every matchup just to be safe. And Super Poly, I think, is just an amazing card. I don't want to run cards like generic targets, like maybe Starving Burn or Violet Chimera, because they might clog up your extra monster zone. And because we don't know if they're worth running anymore. Violet Chimera will probably be, because Salamangreats did not get a single hit in the list. Starving Venom, it depends on how Thunder players adapt, because Thunder players sometimes end with one Colossus to play around Nibiru, or one Colossus, one Titan to play around Super Police, because they won't have two Darks on the field. So Super Poly is kind of a weird card against Thunder, but against Salamangreat it's pretty powerful. And for the generics, I play Reinforcement of the Army, Foolish Burial, and Monster Reborn. Road acts as the fifth normal summon because you search your mekk-knight. Foolish Burial, of course, all of the effects triggered in the graveyard. And Monster Reborn because, like I said, it's the same theory with Falco. You want to bring back your fusions during the late game so that you can have a bigger board, you can play a lot of damage, because that's one problem Shadows have with Master Rule 4 is that cannot have a lot of monsters on the field. And the only trap I run, 2 Shaddoll Core, gives you access to any attribute you want and recycles your spells so you can get back your fusions. So that's pretty good. And it can also be link material, worst case scenario, if you wanted. Now for the fusions, freshly off the ban list after such a long time, thank you Konami, 3 Shaddoll Construct. The deck could not function with 1, it was way too risky to play Shaddolls with 1, but with 3 you can bring one out of the other and keep sending more cards. Her effect to destroy special summon monsters is still very relevant against certain matchups. Maybe some matchups it's not that good. Maybe against Thunder it's a bit weird because unfortunately Construct's effect is mandatory. So if you fight a Colossus, it will be forced to activate that effect, so they will save it. So yeah, that's not that very good. But against other matchups, it's really powerful because against Salamangreats, if you attack a special summon monster with Construct, they will have to protect it with Balings from the Distraction effect. Then you will apply the damage calculation. You will kill it anyway. So it plays around Balings very well. And of course, it's also the effect applies when special summon, not fusion summon. So if you bring it back with Monster Reborn, you will send a monster from the deck to get more pluses. 2 Winda. Winda is the play you want to probably go for when going first, because there's a really good chance your opponent will not be able to play against Winda unless they can bring a monster stronger than her with just one special summon, but that you will need like a Danger Bigfoot or a Thunderbird to do that. 2 Shekinaga. Again, Shekinaga is really good. You play a couple other targets, 3 Mathematician and a Hat Tricker, so you can summon her very easily. 3000 defense is very respectable, and when your opponent activates an effect, you just discard any Shaddoll card, and you negate the activation and destroy it. Then the effect you discarded will get triggered, so you can send either a monster to use the effect or a spell trap to retrieve it later. So that's pretty broken. And now for the 3 generic attributes, play 1 Megatilis, 1 Greystar, and 1 Wendigo. You cannot summon Wendigo and Negatilis on your own. Actually, you can with Shaddoll Core, but I don't think it's worth it. Actually, there are some matchups that Negatilis can lock, like if you're playing against the Necros, like the good old card that got released to counter Necros when Necros was the most dominant force. Yes, you can summon Negatilis to counter that. Greist is really good. You can summon her with Ash Blossom, and you can stop special summons. Wendigo is weird, but I just run her because some decks summon Apollosa, Crystal Wing. There are some decks that bring out wind attribute based negates, so it's really good to have on Wendigo just for a super poly target. It doesn't kill you to run it, you have a lot of space. The only generic monster that I have pointing downwards, Link 2, is Lambda, mainly because it's a light monster, because you can use it for Construct, worst case scenario. But I don't want to run Beatcop because Beatcop is a dark, so you can summon Winda, but Winda is not as impactful as Construct in this specific deck because Construct is what gets you going. So yeah, I think Lambda is good. I'm playing Phoenix to pop back row because sometimes you need to pop a back row before your fusion, so you won't have access to your Shaddoll Dragon that easily. Unicorn, because generic, and the 2 Borals, because this deck sometimes struggles with pushing a lot of damage unless you get your Falcos going. So if you can get a lot of monsters on the field, especially with the help of Damage Juggler, then you can possibly do an OTK with Boral Sword and Borlord. As long as Thunder's still around, I think you have to run Boral in your extra deck if you can summon it fairly consistently. So yep, that's the deck. Again, there are a lot of versions of Shaddolls you can run. If this video gets a lot of views, then we're probably going to be doing more updates of this deck with take your suggestions, what one you want to see with the deck. I think Invoked mekk-knight Shaddoll is the most competitive version you can run right now, but you can also try this version if you want, if you're an old fan of Shaddolls and you want to play as pure of a version as possible. So, yep, thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.